My husband wanted me to move abroad with him and his mistress. I smiled and agreed, but when he got off the plane, I was nowhere to be found. He turned pale with fear. The shrill ring of the telephone shattered the suffocating silence of the vast villa. I glanced around at the expensive furniture I had chosen myself, which now felt alien. 12 years, a third of my life I had spent here, in this house, beside the man I once thought was my world. I answered the phone. The familiar voice of his secretary came through the line. "Mrs. Catherine, I'm calling for a final confirmation of your and Mr. Henry's plane tickets to settle in the United States next week. Business class, departing at 10 p.m. on the 15th. Everything is ready as per Mr. Henry's request." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice from trembling. "Thank you, but there's been a slight change." The other end of the line went silent, waiting. I looked out the window, where raindrops began to fall on the surface of the turquoise pool. "Please cancel my ticket," I said, enunciating each word. "But keep Henry's. And please, book another ticket for Miss Amelia. Full name Amelia Rose. Same flight, same class. Charge everything to Henry's card as usual." The secretary sounded stunned, hesitating for a long moment before replying, "Yes, of course. Do you need me to book a different flight for you?" "Yes," I answered curtly. "Book me a ticket to Annecy, the earliest flight after 10 p.m. on the 15th. "Understood. I'll handle it immediately." Hanging up, I felt a strange sense of relief. The decision was made. 12 years of my youth, of sacrifice, of building an empire with him from nothing, it was time for it all to end. For 9 of those years, he had been secretly seeing a younger woman, and for 9 years, I had lived in a lie, completely unaware. This plane ticket wasn't an escape. It was the final cut severing all my hopes. That evening, Henry came home smelling of alcohol and a familiar, cheap perfume. He loosened his tie and slumped onto the sofa, looking tired but resolute. He was always like that. Once his mind was made up, nothing could sway him. "I need to talk to you," he began, avoiding my eyes. I silently poured him a glass of water and set it on the table. I already knew what he was going to say. "I've decided. Amelia will be going to the US with us." I showed no surprise, just took a small sip of my tea. My calmness seemed to fluster him. "She's been by my side for 9 years, Catherine. Through the toughest times, when the company was struggling, she was there. I owe her a proper status. We'll start over there." "We?" I asked softly, a faint smile on my lips. "You mean you, me, and her?" Henry nodded as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I know it's difficult, but Amelia is a good, understanding woman. I'm sure you'll come to understand. I can't abandon her." I stood up and walked towards the bedroom. "I'm tired. Whatever you decide is fine. I have no objections." My submission made Henry sigh in relief. He thought that I, the woman who had grown dependent on him, wouldn't dare do anything but accept. He had no idea that my heart had grown cold long ago. This house, this wealthy life, and this man, I no longer needed them. I just needed to go home, back to the misty mountains of Annecy, where my parents were waiting. 2 days later, as I was packing a few old keepsakes to take with me, the doorbell rang. On the security monitor, I saw Amelia, holding a large fruit basket. She wore a delicate white dress, her long hair flowing, looking like an innocent muse from a fairy tale. But I knew that behind that fragile exterior was a heart full of calculation. I opened the door. Amelia smiled sweetly, a smile I might have believed 9 years ago. "Hello, Catherine. I came to thank you," she said in a clear voice. "Thank you for your generosity, for agreeing to let me go with Henry." I stepped aside to let her in, not responding to her false gratitude. She followed me into the kitchen, placing the fruit basket on the dining table. "Let me help you," she chirped. "I know all of Henry's favorite dishes. I've been the one cooking for him for years now." Her words were like a needle to my heart. I silently washed the vegetables. Amelia opened the refrigerator with the familiarity of a homeowner, pulling out ingredients. She chattered on about Henry's preferences, things that I, his wife of 12 years, was apparently a stranger to. Henry doesn't like fish with too many bones. He's too lazy to pick them out. And his soup must be made with slow-cooked pork ribs. He likes to chew on the meat more than drink the broth. Then, she grabbed a large bunch of cilantro, a herb I despised for its pungent smell, and began sprinkling it over every dish on the stove. It was a blatant provocation. I turned off the stove and faced her. "Is this all you came here to do?" Amelia blinked innocently. "I just wanted to help. I know you must be tired from preparing for the trip." She leaned in close, whispering so only I could hear. "By the way, Catherine, do you know the password to Henry's accounts? It's my birthday. He said his money is my money. I can spend it however I want." She smiled triumphantly, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. She was flaunting her victory, her irreplaceable position in Henry's heart. She wanted to show me that I, the rightful wife, had lost long ago. The knife in my hand tightened in my grip. My patience had reached its limit. Her words, her smug smile, were the last straw. I slammed the knife onto the cutting board. Clang. The sound echoed in the quiet kitchen. I turned to face her, all the pent-up emotions of the past days erupting. Slap! A sharp slap landed on Amelia's beautiful face, leaving 5 red marks. It was a slap for my 12 years of youth, for the child I never had, for the cruel betrayal of the man I had loved with all my heart. Amelia was stunned for a moment, not expecting me to strike her. But she quickly composed herself. The innocent look vanished, replaced by a cold, sharp glint, and then a perfect act began. She staggered backward, deliberately bumping into the pot of hot pork rib soup on the stove. The pot tipped over, splashing scalding liquid everywhere, some of it landing on her arms and legs. "Ah!" she screamed, falling dramatically to the floor, clutching her reddened arm, tears welling in her eyes. She looked pathetic, a helpless victim of brutal abuse. Just then, the front door burst open. Henry rushed in, having just returned home and heard her scream. The first thing he saw was his beloved mistress sprawled on the kitchen floor, crying in pain, while I stood over her with a cold expression. "Catherine, what the hell are you doing?" he roared, not bothering to ask what had happened or if I was okay. He rushed to Amelia's side, helping her up with worried whispers. "Henry, it hurts so much. Catherine, she..." Amelia sobbed, leaving the sentence unfinished but conveying exactly what she wanted him to believe. Henry turned to me, his eyes red with fury. He had never looked at me like that before. "Are you insane? How could you do this to her? She only came here to help you." I stood silent. What was the point of explaining? In his eyes, I was a jealous, wicked shrew, and she was an innocent angel. "Apologize to Amelia." "Now," Henry commanded, his voice like steel. I looked him straight in the eye, then at Amelia nestled in his arms, and let out a derisive smirk. "Apologize? I did nothing wrong. The ones who should be apologizing are the two of you." My defiance fueled his anger. He helped Amelia up and pointed a finger at me. "Fine. From now on, don't blame me for being cruel." With that, he carefully escorted Amelia out of the house, presumably to a hospital. The door slammed shut, leaving me alone in the messy kitchen, the air thick with the smell of cilantro, and a heart shattered into a million pieces. The next day, I went to the hospital, not because of the fight, but for another reason. For weeks, I had been feeling unwell, tired, and nauseous. I'd thought it was just stress, but a faint premonition urged me to get checked. Sitting in the waiting room, I clutched my appointment slip, my heart in turmoil. Henry and I had been married for 12 years and had tried unsuccessfully for a child for 3. The doctor had said that years of overwork and poor eating habits when I was saving money for his startup had affected my reproductive health. We had almost given up hope. "Catherine Sterling, please proceed to examination room 3. A nurse's voice pulled me back to reality. I walked into the office and saw Chloe, my best friend from university, who was now an obstetrician here. She was happy but surprised to see me. "What are you doing here alone? Where's Henry?" I just gave a weak smile. Chloe didn't press. After a series of tests, she looked at me with a complex expression, a mixture of joy and concern. "Catherine, congratulations. You're pregnant. A little over 6 weeks. Pregnant." The word I had longed to hear for so many years. The child I thought I would never have had arrived at the most ironic time, just as my marriage was crumbling. A hot tear rolled down my cheek. I didn't know if it was a tear of joy or sorrow. Chloe took my hand. "What's wrong? You get good news and you look so miserable. If Henry knew, he'd be ecstatic." I shook my head, wiping away the tear. "We're getting a divorce." Chloe was stunned. I told her everything, the 9 years of deceit, the mistress, the impending move to the US. She slammed her fist on the table in anger. "That bastard! How could he? You sacrificed so much for him, even your health. Now that he's rich, he casts you aside? I'm going to find him and give him a piece of my mind." I stopped her. "It's no use, Chloe. His heart has changed. There's no point in holding on." I sat there numbly, my hand unconsciously resting on my stomach. This baby. It was supposed to be the fruit of our love. But what was left of that love but lies and betrayal? That night, I returned home with the flimsy ultrasound picture in my hand. This tiny life, this seedling I had yearned for, now felt like a cruel joke of fate. I had always thought a child would strengthen our bond. But now, with love gone, what would this child become? A reason to cling to a hopeless situation, or a tool for a future custody battle? Henry came home late. He seemed to have cooled down from the previous day's incident. Seeing me sitting quietly on the sofa, he sat down opposite me, loosening his tie. The air was heavy. I knew I had to ask. One final test to extinguish the last flicker of hope in my heart. "Henry," I began, my voice surprisingly calm, "I want to ask you something." He looked up, a hint of impatience in his eyes. "Just suppose," I said slowly, "if both Amelia and I were pregnant, whose child would you favor?" I looked straight into his eyes, searching for a hint of hesitation, a remnant of the affection we once shared. But his gaze was cold and distant. He didn't even need a second to think. "I only want a child with Amelia," he replied, his voice clear and cruel. "I only want the child that Amelia gives birth to." His words were daggers to my already scarred heart. No hesitation, no sentiment. All my years of sacrifice, all the sleepless nights I'd spent worrying about him, all the times I'd blamed myself for not being able to give him a child, it all became a meaningless joke. The problem wasn't that I couldn't conceive. It was that he didn't want a child with me. My heart turned completely to ice. Any lingering hope was crushed by his answer. I had nothing left to hold on to. I stood up without another word and went to my room. The next morning I went back to the hospital to see Chloe. "You look terrible," she said, worried. "Did you talk to Henry? How did he react?" I shook my head and showed her the consent form for a procedure. "Chloe, please help me." She stared at the paper, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Catherine, are you crazy? Do you know how hard it was for you to have this baby? How could you?" "I can't keep it, Chloe," my voice broke. "It won't have a father. It doesn't deserve to be born into a situation like this. I don't want my child to suffer." Chloe hugged me, and we both cried. She was furious at Henry and heartbroken for me, but as a friend, she respected my decision. Lying on the cold hospital bed, staring at the ceiling lights, I felt a soul-tearing pain, a loss greater than any betrayal. "My baby, forgive me. I can't give you a whole family. It's better that you don't come into this world than to witness the tragedy I'm living through." 2 days after the procedure, my body was still aching, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the emptiness in my soul. I tried to force myself up, walking gently around the room. I wanted to just lie still and forget, but Henry wouldn't let me. He walked into the room, dressed in an expensive suit, his hair perfectly styled. It was his 40th birthday. "Get ready," he commanded. "There's a birthday party at the restaurant tonight. You have to come with me." I looked at him, my voice weak. "I'm not well. I can't go." Henry frowned impatiently. "Don't make excuses. If you don't go, people will talk. Amelia is pregnant. You need to be there to maintain her image, to show people you're a magnanimous wife. Don't make things difficult for me. Maintain the image of my husband's mistress. How ironic. He didn't care about my health, had no idea what I had just been through. In his eyes, I was just a tool, a decoration to complete his and Amelia's fabricated happy family. In the end, I went. I chose a modest black dress and put on light makeup to hide my pale, tired face. The party was at one of the city's most luxurious restaurants, filled with influential business people. The glittering lights, the smooth music, the cheerful chatter, it all highlighted my loneliness. I sat alone in a corner, watching as Henry, playing the part of a successful and happy man, walked hand in hand with Amelia, greeting guests. Amelia wore a vibrant red dress that subtly showed off her slight baby bump, her face glowing with triumph. They looked like the perfect couple, a happy family awaiting a new member. And I, the legal wife, was an outsider, a ghost in my own life. During the main event, Henry led Amelia to the stage. "Thank you all for coming," he announced into the microphone, his voice full of excitement. "Tonight, I have some very special news. My wife and I are expecting a little angel. Amelia is pregnant." The room erupted in applause. All eyes turned to Amelia, then darted towards me with expressions of curiosity, pity, and ridicule. Amelia nestled happily against Henry, her hand on her belly. In that moment, I became the biggest joke in the room. I sat frozen in my dark corner, my wine glass untouched. The whispers and stares felt like thousands of invisible needles. I just wanted to leave, to escape this farce. Just then, Amelia walked over, her smile brighter than ever. She sat down next to me, her voice sweet but provocative. "Catherine, aren't you going to congratulate Henry? You are the first wife, after all." "What do you want?" I asked, not bothering to look at her. "Oh, nothing," she shrugged innocently. "I just wanted to tell you. Henry will divorce you eventually. He needs someone who can give him an heir, a complete family. What's the point of keeping a barren wife like you around?" Her words were another knife twisting in my fresh wound. She didn't know, or pretended not to know, that I had just lost my child. "That's none of your business," I said coldly. "Oh, but it will be my business soon," she giggled. "You should sign the divorce papers voluntarily to save yourself some face. Don't wait until Henry throws you out in disgrace." She stood up and glided away like a queen bestowing a favor. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, needing to escape the suffocating room. As I walked down a quiet corridor, I glimpsed Amelia in a secluded corner, her back to me, typing quickly on her phone. She sent the message and smiled, a mysterious, calculating smile. A woman's intuition told me something was wrong. That wasn't a smile of happiness. It was the smile of someone setting a trap. A sense of unease crept over me. I tried to walk faster, but it was too late. As I rounded a corner, the door to a small private room flew open. Two large, menacing men blocked my path. Before I could react, one clamped a hand over my mouth, while the other pinned my arms behind my back, dragging me into the dark room. The door slammed shut, trapping me in darkness and fear. It was an empty karaoke room, smelling of stale alcohol and cigarettes. "Who are you? Let me go," I struggled. One of them sneered. "We were told to take good care of you. Behave and it won't hurt, beautiful." My heart stopped. I knew what they intended, but then rage surged through me. I would not let them violate me. I would die first. As one of them approached, I bit down hard on the hand covering my mouth. He yelped in pain and let go. Seizing the opportunity, I kicked the other man hard in the groin. He doubled over in pain. I scrambled away, my eyes searching for a weapon. I grabbed an empty beer bottle from a table, smashed it against the edge, and held the jagged neck out in front of me. "Don't come near me," I screamed, my voice trembling but my eyes fierce. The men were taken aback by my resistance. Taking advantage of their hesitation, I bolted for the door, yanked it open, and ran for my life, not daring to look back. My clothes were torn, my hair a mess, the broken bottle still in my hand. I ran straight back to the main party hall, towards the light and the people. And then I saw her. Amelia, standing next to Henry, smiling and chatting with guests as if nothing had happened. But when she saw my disheveled state, a flicker of panic crossed her eyes before being replaced by feigned surprise. It was her. She had arranged it all. Anger, humiliation, and fear exploded within me. I lost control. In a fit of rage, I charged towards her. "Ah!" I screamed, and with all my remaining strength, I kicked her right in the stomach she and Henry were so proud of. The bustling hall fell silent. The music stopped. All eyes were on us. Amelia let out a piercing scream and collapsed, clutching her abdomen, her beautiful face contorted in either real or expertly feigned pain. For a second, Henry was frozen. Then, a volcanic rage erupted. He didn't even glance at my pathetic state or ask what had happened. He only saw his precious mistress in pain on the floor. He rushed to her side. "Amelia, are you okay? Our baby." Then he looked up at me with an expression I will never forget, one of pure hatred and cruelty. He shot up and charged at me like a wild animal. "You're insane," he roared, and then he kicked me, with all the force of an enraged man, right in my abdomen, exactly where my surgical wound was still fresh. A searing pain shot through me, and I collapsed, gasping for air. But the physical agony was nothing compared to the venomous words he spat at me in front of everyone. "You're a despicable woman. Just because you can't have children, you got jealous of Amelia, didn't you? You wanted to kill my child. I never knew you could be so evil." His words were like sledgehammers, pulverizing my already broken heart. I looked up at the man I had loved with my entire being, the man I had sacrificed my youth for, as he publicly humiliated me, trampling on my dignity without a shred of compassion. In that moment, our 12 years of marriage, our shared history, died completely. The pain vanished, replaced by a terrifying emptiness. The party guests whispered and pointed. The birthday celebration had turned into a tragicomedy, and I was the pathetic clown. Henry didn't say another word. He scooped Amelia up and rushed out, yelling for an ambulance. The crowd dispersed, leaving me on the cold floor. I struggled to get up, a sharp pain shooting through my lower abdomen. I felt a warm liquid seeping through my dress. My wound had reopened. That night, I walked back to the empty villa alone, blood dripping from the reopened wound onto the dark pavement, a coldness seeping from my body into the very core of my soul. Finally, the 15th arrived. Henry had been staying at the hospital with Amelia. It turned out she hadn't miscarried, just had a minor scare, a perfect performance. I stayed home alone, changing my own bandages, taking my medicine, and quietly packing. Not the large suitcases for a new life in the US, but a small handbag with a few old clothes, my ID, and some personal savings. I left behind all the designer clothes and expensive jewelry Henry had bought me. I wanted nothing that belonged to him. That morning, Henry returned with a frail-looking Amelia on his arm. They ignored me as if I were invisible. I silently dragged my small bag to the door. We all rode to the airport in the same car, in silence. They whispered to each other in the back seat while I stared out the window, taking one last look at the familiar city. After 12 years, I was leaving with nothing but a scarred heart. At the airport, Henry handled their check-in. I stood back and watched. They looked like a pair of newlyweds, and I was the third wheel. When it was time to go through security, I spoke up. "Your tickets are business class. The priority lane is over there. You two go ahead. I'll take the regular line. It's too crowded here." He glanced at me and nodded. "Suit yourself." He led Amelia towards the priority gate without a single look back. I watched them disappear, a final tear rolling down my cheek. Goodbye, my youth. Goodbye, my tragic 12-year marriage. Once they were gone, I turned decisively. I didn't go towards the international security gate, but to the domestic departures terminal. I calmly handed my ticket and ID to the agent. "Have a nice flight," she said. I nodded and walked through. Sitting in the departure lounge, watching the planes take off and land, I felt a lightness I hadn't felt in years. It was really over. My flight to Annecy took off on time. As the plane climbed through the clouds, I looked down at the glittering city shrinking below. It held so many memories, good and bad, but from now on it was all in the past. A new life was waiting for me. At that same moment, thousands of miles away, the plane carrying Henry and Amelia landed safely in Los Angeles. Henry turned on his phone, intending to call a business partner, but the first thing he saw was an email with the subject line, "Divorce Petition." It was much later, through fragmented stories from old acquaintances, that I pieced together what happened to Henry on that fateful day. While I was on a flight back to Annecy, feeling strangely serene, he was stepping onto the promised land where he planned to build a new future with his mistress. Amelia was leaning tiredly on his shoulder as Henry, with the smugness of a victor, turned on his phone. His smile vanished when he saw the email subject, "Divorce Petition." He clicked it open. It was a professionally drafted document stating my request for a unilateral divorce, with a proposal for division of assets and no request for alimony, signed electronically by my lawyer. His first reaction, I was told, was pure rage. He assumed I was throwing a tantrum, seeking attention after the birthday party fiasco. "Playing games," he muttered dismissively. "Let's see how long she can keep this up." He immediately tried to call me. "The number you have dialed is not reachable." He frowned and tried again. The same automated response. He went on social media to send me an angry message, only to find I had blocked him everywhere. The initial anger slowly morphed into an unsettling feeling. The docile little bird he had kept in a cage for so long had suddenly grown talons. For the first few days in the US, he maintained his arrogant attitude, telling Amelia I was just being difficult and would come crawling back soon. He busied himself with meetings, pretending not to care. But at night, in their expensive rented apartment, the deafening silence from his phone began to unnerve him. He called his secretary, his voice sharp. "Check for me. Did Catherine get on that plane?" The secretary stammered before replying, "Sir." Catherine canceled her ticket to the US and booked one to Annecy. The news was like a bucket of ice water to his face. Annecy? What is she doing back home? The truth, stark and cruel, began to dawn on him. This wasn't a tantrum. This was a real departure. A sense of panic he had never known started to creep in. He ignored Amelia's whining about shopping and frantically made calls to my parents, who didn't answer, and to our mutual friends, who all claimed ignorance. Finally, in desperation, he found Chloe's number. "Where is Catherine? Tell me where she is," he yelled into the phone. Chloe just laughed coldly. "What right do you have to ask about her? A heartless man like you doesn't even deserve to say her name." "What are you talking about? I'm her husband." "Husband?" Chloe's voice dripped with sarcasm. "A husband who would kick his wife in the stomach 2 days after she had surgery to remove the child he fathered? Did you know Henry? Catherine was pregnant. She wanted that baby so badly. But when she asked you, you said you only wanted a child with that homewrecker. You killed your own child, did you know that?" They said that after that call, Henry sat in stunned silence for hours, the phone slipping from his hand. Abortion. Catherine was pregnant and had an abortion. Chloe's words struck him like lightning, shattering his arrogance and confidence. Everything came rushing back my pale face, my hypothetical question, his brutal kick at the party. A wave of belated, soul-crushing regret washed over him. But it was too late. The night flight brought me back to Annecy on a misty morning. The crisp, cool air, scented with pine and damp earth, filled my lungs, making me feel better instantly. I was home. My parents were shocked to see me return with just a small bag and hollow eyes. I lied, telling them there were some work issues in the US and I'd come back for a short break, not wanting them to worry. But I only stayed for 3 days. I was afraid Henry would find me there and bother my parents. I didn't want them to witness my failed marriage, nor did I want to face the questions of neighbors. I needed a completely new place to start over. After confiding part of the truth to my mother and asking her not to tell anyone where I was going, I quietly left. I moved to a small, quiet city not too far from Annecy. With my savings, I bought a charming little guest house on a hill, surrounded by lush green tea fields. I wanted to build a new home for myself, a place of peace. I threw myself into renovating the guest house. The physical labor helped me temporarily forget my pain, but at night, loneliness and memories would return, keeping me awake. One afternoon, while I was painting the wooden fence, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something urged me to. Hello? Catherine? It's Julian. The name was a whisper from the past. Julian, my childhood friend and neighbor. He was 5 years older and used to carry me on his back as we explored the hills. He had gone abroad to study years ago, and we had lost touch. Julian? My voice was full of disbelief. I just got back a few days ago. I stopped by your parents' house to say hello, and your mother told me what happened. I was so worried I got your number and called right away. Where are you, Catherine? His warm, concerned voice made my eyes sting. It had been so long since someone had genuinely cared for me. I gave him my address. Just 2 hours later, a familiar car pulled up in front of my guest house. Julian got out, looking the same tall and mature, though his eyes held a new depth. He looked at me, at my paint-splattered clothes, and then around the small guest house. There was no pity in his eyes, only a deep sense of compassion and respect. You've been through a lot, he said. That simple sentence broke down all my defenses. I burst into tears, releasing all the pent-up sorrow and pain. Julian said nothing, just offered a steady shoulder for me to lean on. He didn't ask many questions about the past. He just quietly stayed by my side, helping with the heavy work. He fixed the leaky roof, repaired a wobbly wooden chair, and planted rows of roses in the front yard. His presence was like a breath of fresh air, blowing away the shadows in my life. He was the complete opposite of Henry. Where Henry was domineering and self-centered, Julian was gentle, thoughtful, and a good listener. One evening, as we were sipping tea on the porch, watching the valley light up, Julian asked me, "What are your plans for the future, Catherine?" I'm not sure, I hesitated. Probably just run this guest house. Live a quiet life. He shook his head and looked me in the eye. No, Catherine, you're not meant for just a quiet life. You're smart, sharp. You were always at the top of your class. You've spent the last 12 years sacrificing for someone else. Now, it's time to live for yourself. He paused. Why don't you go back to school? Get a master's degree, an MBA. You have a real talent for business. You helped your ex-husband build an empire. Why can't you do that for yourself? His words were like a key, unlocking a door I'd never dared to consider. Go back to school? Start a business? Me, a woman approaching 40 who had spent years as a housewife? As if reading my thoughts, Julian smiled encouragingly. Don't worry, I'm here. I'll help you. I believe you can do it. Give yourself a chance to start over, to become a better version of yourself. His words ignited a flame of hope within me. He's right. Why not? I couldn't live in the past forever. I had to stand up and prove to Henry, and to the world, that I could live well without him even better. From that day on, my life turned a new page. By day, I managed the guest house. By night, I studied for the entrance exams for an MBA program. Julian became my teacher and my companion, patiently explaining economic concepts I had long forgotten and encouraging me whenever I felt discouraged. Slowly, I regained my confidence and joy. The guest house started attracting guests who loved its tranquility. For the first time in 12 years, I felt like I was truly living for myself. 2 years passed in a flash. In that time, my life transformed. I was accepted into my dream MBA program and successfully managed my growing guest house. Meanwhile, Henry's life was spiraling downwards. His business in the U.S. faltered. Without me, his steadfast support system, he struggled. His business decisions became hasty and reckless. He threw himself into work to escape his guilt, but the more he tried, the more things fell apart. The company suffered continuous losses, and major partners lost faith. His relationship with Amelia also fractured. The conflicts between them surfaced without me as a buffer. Amelia was not a family woman. She was used to a life of luxury and lavish spending. The financial strain and his own exhaustion made Henry lose patience with her. Their arguments became more frequent. The breaking point came when Amelia had a miscarriage in her 4th month. Initially, Henry was devastated, but by chance, he discovered a shocking truth. The miscarriage was due to complications from her previous numerous abortions. Suspicious, he investigated further and learned that during her years with him, Amelia had had other affairs. The child she lost might not have even been his. This truth shattered his last shred of belief in her. The innocent, understanding woman he had protected turned out to be a liar. He looked back at his life. For a sordid affair, he had lost his loyal wife, lost a child he never knew he had, and now his career was in ruins. He threw Amelia out. Her tears and pleas were useless. Now, only one image haunted him, mine. He began a frantic search for me. He flew back to Europe, went to my parents' house in Annecy, but was met with cold silence. He hired private investigators, but I had vanished. Guilt and regret turned him into a pathetic man, desperately clinging to a past he could never get back. The day I received my MBA degree was the day I officially closed the chapter of my life in hiding. With my new knowledge and financial support from Julian, whom I now considered my dearest friend, I decided to return to the city. But this time, I was not the submissive housewife of the past, but an independent woman ready to build my own career. I founded a company specializing in interior design and construction. My innate sense of style, combined with the practical experience I'd gained from decorating my old villa and the guest house, quickly landed my company its first contracts. I worked tirelessly, personally overseeing projects and negotiating with clients. Gradually, my brand, Catherine's Designs, made a name for itself. To celebrate my return, Julian organized a grand party, inviting many successful entrepreneurs. He said it was an opportunity for me to expand my network. That evening, I wore an elegant emerald green gown, my hair in a chic updo. When Julian and I entered the ballroom, all eyes turned to us. I was no longer the timid woman of the past. I smiled confidently as I walked by his side. The party was in full swing when I spotted a familiar figure in a corner. The man was much thinner, his designer suit hanging loosely on his frame. He stared at me with an expression of shock, disbelief, and profound pain. It was Henry. He had been invited, perhaps as a has-been entrepreneur. I'd heard his company had all but collapsed after his failure in the US. He stood there, watching me confidently network with potential partners, receiving praise for my talent. The woman he had discarded, the woman he thought could only depend on him, was now shining brightly. I saw him slowly walk towards me. Julian seemed to sense his presence and gently squeezed my hand in reassurance. Henry stopped in front of me, his voice hoarse and trembling. "Catherine, is it really you?" I looked at him, my expression unreadable, and gave a slight nod. "Hello, Henry. Long time no see." The distance and coldness in my voice seemed to stun him. The brilliant Catherine everyone was praising, this successful, beautiful woman, was the wife he had so cruelly abandoned. In that instant, his entire world seemed to collapse. After that fateful night, Henry began to haunt my life like a shadow. He would be waiting outside my office in the morning with a flask of hot soup, the kind I used to make for him. Huge bouquets of roses would arrive at my office anonymously. In the evening, I would see his familiar car parked at a distance, following me home. He never approached, just performed these silent acts, perhaps thinking his persistence would soften my heart. He was wrong. My heart had turned to stone long ago. I told my secretary to throw away the flowers and give the soup to the security guard. I acted as if he didn't exist. A week later, unable to bear it any longer, I arranged to meet him at a cafe. He arrived early, looking more put together, but still haggard. "What do you want?" I got straight to the point. "Catherine, I know I was wrong," he said hastily, his eyes filled with regret. "Please, give me a chance to make it up to you. Can we start over?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Start over? Don't you find that ridiculous, Henry?" There's nothing left between us to start over with. What you did to me, to our child, I will never forget it. I placed a file on the table. This is the divorce petition. I've signed it. Please sign it and set us both free. He stared at the papers, his face pale. He shook his head vehemently. No, I won't sign. I will never divorce you. Then we'll see each other in court, I said firmly, standing up to leave him there, looking utterly defeated. But Henry didn't give up. He went to my parents in Annecy, knelt before them, and tearfully begged them to speak to me on his behalf. But my father, a gentleman who had never raised his voice in his life, pointed to the door. Go home. My daughter has suffered enough because of you. How she lives her life from now on is her choice. This family no longer has a son-in-law named Henry. Rejected by my parents, he returned to the city in utter despair, but he continued to harass me. Meanwhile, Amelia, after being cast out by Henry, was also living a difficult life. With no money and her looks fading, she resented Henry, but she hated me most of all. She blamed me for her downfall. When she heard that I had returned as a successful businesswoman with Julian by my side, her jealousy and hatred boiled over. One evening, Julian and I were having dinner at a restaurant. Amelia suddenly appeared, looking disheveled and wild-eyed. You bitch, she screamed, attracting everyone's attention. You stole Henry from me, and now you're seducing another man. You're nothing but a whore. Before I could react, she grabbed the pot of boiling soup from our table and tried to throw it at me. In a flash, Julian pulled me behind him and knocked the pot away. The hot liquid splashed onto his arm, turning it red. Restaurant staff rushed over and escorted Amelia out. I was horrified, tending to Julian's burn, filled with a mixture of worry and anger, but that was just the beginning of her madness. A few days later, on my way home from work, a car cut me off. Amelia and a man, probably her brother, dragged me out of my car. They gagged and tied me up, taking me to the rooftop of an abandoned building. There, Amelia had set up a phone, live streaming. She slapped me repeatedly, pulling my hair while crying and ranting to her online audience. Look, everyone, this is the homewrecker who destroyed my happiness, made me lose my baby, lose everything. A woman like her must be punished. She spun a complete lie, painting herself as the victim and me as the villain. I struggled, but it was useless. Fear and rage consumed me. Fortunately, Julian had felt something was wrong. After the restaurant incident, he had secretly placed a small tracking device in my handbag. Seeing my location stationary for too long in an unfamiliar place, he sensed trouble and followed the signal. When he burst onto the rooftop, he saw me tied to a pillar, my face swollen, and Amelia and her brother gloating at the phone. Enraged, he subdued her brother with a few punches and ended the live stream. He grabbed a hysterical Amelia and held her fast. You will pay for this, he said, his voice like ice as he called the police. After the police took Amelia and her brother away, Julian rushed to untie me. He took off his coat and wrapped it around me, pulling me into a hug. It's okay now. I'm here. It's all over. His warm voice and strong arms were my undoing. I broke down, sobbing like a child, all the fear and humiliation pouring out. He took me to his apartment and carefully cleaned and bandaged my wounds. Later that evening, when I had calmed down, he sat beside me, took my hand, and looked me in the eye. Catherine, he began, his voice full of sincere emotion, I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better. Seeing you hurt like that, it breaks my heart. He paused. Catherine, I love you. Not just recently, but for a very long time. Since we were kids playing on the hills in Annecy. All those years I was abroad, I never forgot you. When I came back and learned what you'd been through, I promised myself I would spend the rest of my life protecting you and making you happy. He pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a sparkling diamond ring. Catherine Sterling, will you marry me? Let me be the one to bring you happiness. Tears streamed down my face again, but this time, they were tears of joy and relief. This man had been with me at my lowest, had helped me rise from the ashes. His love was quiet, patient, and warm. I nodded, my voice choked with emotion. Yes, I will. The day of my divorce hearing with Henry, it poured rain. Julian came with me. In contrast to my composure, Henry looked like a ghost. He was gaunt, his eyes empty. His expensive suit was wrinkled. With his company bankrupt and his mistress in jail, he had lost everything. Throughout the hearing, he said nothing, just stared at me. When the judge asked for our final consent to the divorce, I answered with a clear yes. After a long silence, Henry nodded weakly. The judge's gavel fell, officially ending our 14-year marriage. As we left the courtroom, Henry blocked our path. He looked at me, then at Julian, a bitter, crazed smile on his face. Congratulations. You finally got what you wanted. Left your washed-up husband for a richer, better prospect. Henry, it's over. Please have some self-respect, Julian said, stepping in front of me. Henry ignored him, his wild eyes fixed on me. Over? No. I've lost everything. I won't let you two be happy. I won't let you have peace. He laughed maniacally and staggered off into the rain. Watching his pathetic retreat, I felt not triumph, but a lingering sadness. A man who once stood at the pinnacle of success had been brought this low by his own greed and betrayal. In the following days, Julian and I began planning our wedding. We wanted a small, intimate affair, but news of my engagement to a successful young entrepreneur somehow reached Henry. With nothing left to lose, he began plotting his final revenge. He couldn't bear to see me happy with another man. He wanted to destroy my wedding day, to drag me down into the mire of despair with him. Our wedding was held at a quiet resort outside the city. I wore a simple white dress I designed myself, walking hand in hand with Julian, the man I knew would love and cherish me for the rest of my life. Everything was perfect. During the reception, I noticed Julian discreetly signal the security team. A few minutes later, just as the main course was about to be served, he took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue, I'd like to introduce an uninvited guest. He gestured towards the kitchen area. 2 security guards escorted Henry out. He was dressed in a waiter's uniform, clutching a small white packet of powder. The guests gasped. Henry, what are you doing here? What's that in your hand? Julian asked, his voice calm but firm. Henry's face went white. He stammered, I was just... You were planning to put a strong laxative in the main course, weren't you? Julian continued. To ruin our special day, to humiliate us in front of everyone. Henry collapsed, kneeling on the floor, sobbing and begging. I was wrong, Catherine. I just couldn't stand it. Please forgive me. Julian explained that after Henry's threat at the courthouse, he had anticipated trouble and had him followed. He knew of Henry's plan and had arranged everything. The food for the main table was fake, just for show, and the real food had been prepared separately. Henry's entire act had been caught on camera. The police arrested him. A few weeks later, Amelia was sentenced to 7 years in prison for kidnapping and assault. Henry, due to his unstable mental state, was committed to a psychiatric hospital for mandatory treatment. The past was finally laid to rest. Julian and I had a real wedding, a quiet ceremony with just our families and closest friends at the little guest house where our love had blossomed. Under the clear blue sky, surrounded by green hills, we exchanged our vows. After all the storms, my life had finally found its peaceful harbor. A year later, we welcomed a beautiful baby girl. She has Julian's bright, clear eyes. Watching him awkwardly cradle her, singing her to sleep, my heart fills with a simple happiness I had never known. The past is behind me, its pain a valuable lesson. I am no longer a woman living for others, but a wife, a mother, and a confident businesswoman standing on my own 2 feet. Life took 12 years of my youth, but in return, it gave me a wonderful man and a complete family. After a lifetime of missteps, I had finally found my way home.